I'll refer to both of these Steeldive watches as Willards. I made sure to buy each of these Willards from vendors advertising their respective Willard as being the new, updated version. I had expected both Willards to be the same, with exception to the dial window and dial color. This was not the case. I'll use the day version of the Willard as my model for this review. I'll only make comparisons between the day and day-date versions when the watches differ. When I speak about the Willard without mentioning the specific version, I'm speaking generically about both watches. The Willard's case integration with the bracelet is more than adequate and significantly better than the much more expensive Seiko Land that I reviewed. The rear of the day's bracelet's end links are not flush with the case back, whereas the rear of the day date's end links are flush with the case back. The case back cover is lightly incised with Steeldive's logo. The day-date version has a significantly wider well in the back of its case for your fingers to operate the crown. After seeing this difference, one would think that the day-date's crown would be easier to operate than the day version, but this is not the case at all. There'll be more on crown operation shortly. I give the Willard's case an A. The Willard's crown has a lightly etched logo. The day version's crown is significantly easier to screw in and unscrew than the day-date version. Why this is, I can't say for sure. It might have to do with the difference between the wells in the case back that I mentioned. I give the day version's crown axis a B-. I give the day date's crown axis a D. The day date's crown is so difficult for my thick fingers to screw and unscrew that I know that sooner or later operating the day date's crown is going to give me tendonitis, which I'm prone to. The day date's crown, for me personally, is a deal breaker. If you're wondering why I gave the day version crown a B- and not an A, it's because while the date's crown operation is more than adequate, it's still a little difficult to maneuver my fingers because there's no clearance for my fingers. I've never handled an original Seiko Willard nor its reissue by Seiko. If the crown axis issue is a result of Steeldive trying to be faithful to Seiko's original design of the Willard, this doesn't exempt Steeldive according to my grading system. The bracelet fits wrists up to a really impressive 9.5 inches in width. The bracelet width is 20 millimeters. It tapers down to 18 millimeters and is 20 millimeters at the clasp. The bracelet is smooth and has good fluidity. What concerns me about the bracelet is how easy it was to push out the cotter pins and hammer them back in. This doesn't necessarily mean that the bracelet is insecure, but it does make me a little wary, especially considering that, based on my experience with Steeldive, the company is fully capable of making some really Mickey Mouse design decisions. Without wearing the bracelet long term, I cannot predict how well the bracelet will hold together over the long term. I cannot deduct points based on a suspicion that it might not be held together securely. I give the bracelet an A, but it's a nervous A. The clasp is adequate, yet a little janky. The swing arm is robust. The latch doesn't seem to close firmly or securely. There's an awkward gap here while wearing it. The clasp has 6 micro adjusts. It only needs 4. The pin of the day-date version clasp was broken when I received the watch. Pins fit into the clasp with some difficulty, suggesting to me that the width of the clasp wasn't calibrated as well as it should have been. The width of the 2 unnecessary micro adjusts contributes to the awkward gap jutting out. The date's bezel sounds nicer than the day-date's bezel, but the day-date's bezel is a lot easier to turn and has a proper resistance. The date's bezel is a little too tight. I give the date's bezel a B-. I give the day-date's bezel an A. The Willard has a nice ceramic bezel insert. The Willard has a really nice clear sapphire crystal. The edge of the day-date crystal is significantly nicer looking than the day. I haven't been able to quantify why this is. It might be a little thicker. Both Willards have a case thickness of 13.5 millimeters. I haven't noticed any glare issues with the Willard. I'm not able to test the Willard in bright sunlight as I don't get this in Northeast Vermont in the middle of winter. The Willard doesn't have any AR coating and it probably doesn't need any. I really like the dial color of the day version, but I don't like the chapter rings color, which reminds me of the color of a hospital vomit ball. I don't think the vomit blue of the chapter ring complements the robin's egg blue of the dial. The day version doesn't come in robin's egg blue. I think the black dial is perfectly fine, but if I could have gotten the day-date in the robin's egg blue color, I would have in a heartbeat, despite my dislike of the vomit ball color chapter ring. The Willard style is nice and clear. I really like how Steeldive implemented both the day and day-date windows. Both are clear and readable. I also really like that the day-date has a Roman numeral option for the day of the week. The indices and especially the hands are nicely done. There's something very classy about brushed hands. I give the Willard's dial a very easy A. I included the dimensions of the Willard's case in the specifications at the beginning of this video. I usually run through all the measurements with pictures of my taking them. I'm not going to do this with the Willard as its case shape is both rectangular and asymmetrical. The Willard's unorthodox shape doesn't provide any meaningful information about how the watch might wear on your wrist. My wrist is roughly 7 inches. On my wrist, the Willard wears similar to a Seiko 5, only a bit wider. The Willard doesn't wear nearly as wide as the Seiko King Turtle, which is way too big for my wrist. I'm pretty happy with the way the Willard wears on my wrist, though it's a tad too wide for me, as evidenced by the crown guard bumping into the base of my hand when I raise it. The Willard is a relatively thick watch. Despite the Willard being a little too wide for me, I'd still wear it as it's still pretty comfortable and it's a really sexy watch. The Willard is a pretty heavy watch at 192 grams. Both versions use entry-level Seiko movements. The day version has a slightly better Lume application, though both versions have really impressive Lume, especially considering how cheap the Willard is. I was getting at least 3 hours of readable Lume on both versions. I'd really like to see only one color of Lume, not two. If my memory is serving me correctly, the original Steeldive Willard had 3 colors of Lume, so at least Steeldive is moving in the right direction. I give Lume for both versions an easy A. I give the day version of the Willard an overall grade of A. If the day Willard's bracelet remains in one piece over long-term use, then the day Willard is a grand slam. I give the day-date version of the Willard a D. A watch is only as good as its crown, and the day-date's crown, for whatever reason, sucks. I had bought the day-date version for myself after first purchasing the day version for review. I only wear day-date watches. I won't be wearing the Willard day-date because of its poorly designed crown, and I'm feeling quite screwed by Steeldive. My review of what is now an older version of the Steeldive SD1940 left me with the impression that Steeldive is a Mickey Mouse outfit. Now, after seeing the lack of standardization as well as oversight in Steeldive's manufacturing process, my overall impression of Steeldive hasn't changed.
And now a message from the President of the United States of Heaven.
We choose to like and subscribe to Watch Lab, not because it's easy, but because it's hard.